Honestly, it was kind of weird. When I started college, I had already taken through Calc 2 in high school. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I considered being a behavioral profiler like Clarice on Silence of the Lambs. I considered being a meteorologist because I like tornadoes. I considered engineering for a while. But really what it came down to is when I started school, I started pre-farm because I thought, well, I'll make money. It's medical field. I don't have to touch blood. We'll try that. And my first semester, I didn't have a math class because I had everything I needed. And I found that when I was stressed out, trying to memorize all these things for my biology classes, that I would grab a calc book and do problems to calm myself. Like, I was kind of weird. But I felt like I knew if once I started a problem, I could figure it out, and I knew I was right. And it was like that closure, that accomplishment piece that I was missing in some of my other coursework.
Welcome to Faculty Voices, where we talk about teaching and learning and the incredible work you do in the classroom.
So my name is Jessica Hoppe, and I teach math at Spokane Falls Community College.
If you had to narrow it down to one thing, what is the one thing you would like your students to learn in your classes?
I would like them to learn confidence. In the math classroom, often I have students that come in very math injured. I teach a lot of our remedial classes, but even some of the higher level ones, students come in feeling like their smartness in math is a fixed trait and that they're not capable of deep thinking. So my goal is that by the time they leave the class, they believe that they can problem solve, they believe they can persevere, and they believe in themselves.
So how do you teach that?
So I try to invite them to engage in tasks that are more open. In math, I don't know if it's the same language we use in other topic areas, but we talk about them as low floor, high ceiling tasks that are really designed for differentiation. So you can ask a task that any student could enter. It could be something where even the first investigation is folding paper that anyone would have more access to, but you can take it to a lot of different levels so that people can all get something out of it and all grow, even though they may be pushed in different ways. But it allows for that differentiation so students are met where they are and then can move forward.
Fantastic. What drew you to the discipline of math?
I kind of thought maybe I should do something in engineering or math, just because I seem to have affinity for it. I like it. And then I tried engineering because I don't know, being a mathematician didn't seem like a career at that point. And I really didn't like the computer science piece of it that was so ingrained in the engineering coursework I took. So then math was kind of the natural fit for me there.
And how far did you have you gone with math? Like, what is there an area of specialty for you in mathematics?
Not really. So when I finished my bachelor's in math, I actually had I had started working in a tutoring center and realized I liked teaching. So I had that interest in teaching more than just pure mathematics at that point. So after I graduated with my bachelor's in math, I went and got a master's in teaching. And then I ended up going back and getting a master's in math as well. But my interest now is definitely in math education research and in those kind of areas. And that's what I'm currently working on my PhD in.
So what has been your best experience in the classroom so far in your career?
So I often teach our math for elementary education teachers classes, which are some of my favorites to teach because I get to talk about math, but also about pedagogy a lot more. And we have some honest conversations. And I worked with a group, I had them 2 quarters in a row. And I remember one day, and not that this didn't happen more often, but I remember they were having this debate about if the whole mattered when you were dealing with fractions or percents or both. And they had a very very back and forth conversation about it, to a point where I just stood along the wall like a fly and watched them kind of debate this idea for 20, 30 minutes without them even recognizing how long it had been. And it was just beautiful. It was just so great to see them own the learning and press on each other. And I was just so ecstatic to see that kind of engagement and excitement in debate about math.
Why is math important?
So it might sound a little cliche, but I really think it's the problem-solving characteristics of math that are really important. For me personally, a lot of the computational skills, they really can be replaced by a calculator at this point in technology. So I think that math in the 21st century should really be about, here's this problem we're looking at, or here's this data set we're trying to understand. What tools, what models do we have to try to make sense of it, and how do we interpret those? Or when we look at other forms of data literacy that we see in media and things like that, how do we make sense of these types of relationships? And I think that's why I tend to gravitate more towards our non-STEM math classes, because they almost feel like there's more freedom for that. I think we still have a ways to go in our, calculus, pre-calculus series to get past this point where we still feel so reliant on computation, because that's just how we were taught, and to really get to this place of, okay, why do we need them to do that if they can put it in their technology? What do I really want them to know about this idea? And to me, it's more about, can you build a model for a real world situation? Let the tech do the nitty gritty stuff, and then can you interpret what comes out of that and make it meaningful? So that's, to me, what math in the 21st century should be about and is important.
It sounds to me like you're describing the quant literacy gen ed outcome.
Yeah.
Can you describe your relationship with gen ed and the quant literacy rubric?
So, a lot of the pieces of our quantitative literacy rubric are about those 21st century skills. Can you communicate? Can you show that you understand the assumptions involved in what assumptions you're making as you're working on something, and interpret what's happening? It is all about, that rubric is all about problem solving and the different components that work in that, collaborative components that I try to put in my classroom and things like that. There's very few of that rubric is about, can you take the derivative of something? That's not really what it's about. Is can you look at this problem, see why that would be a useful tool, apply it, but then interpret what that means? And it's so much more about not the computation, it's the other things that rubric really highlights.
Yeah, it makes me think about this idea that the math and how it relates to all these other subject matters, whether it be botany or biology or engineering, et cetera. It's a problem-solving thinking skill as opposed to a computational one. And I just was recently listening to a podcast about Paul Dirac's equation. He was the English, he was half French, but he was a mathematician that connected quantum mechanics to Einstein's theory of relativity. And this idea that there's a mathematical algorithm that can describe every part of our physical existence, which I found very poetic, very beautiful. Mm-hmm. So back on track, what challenges do you face in your career?
One of the challenges that I face is trying to work to engage all students equitably. I think it's always a challenge to try to meet students where they are, especially when we have large class sizes and things like that. We all come in with different support systems, and even just me coming with my lens of a middle-class white female, I may not recognize all the microaggressions or little pieces that I'm missing. And so, I can go through trainings and workshops and try to get better at that. But there's just so many things that as a teacher, you can always do better to reach students. So the question was about challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
Challenges as a teacher. There's so many. So one of the things I'm really struggling with, both in this new online kind of remote environment and before that, is assessment, and authentic assessment that is equitable, because I really don't feel that tests and exams are. I think that they put a lot of stress on folks. I think in terms of what I value, these 21st century skills, most of the time, like in work environment, you're not doing things alone, you're collaborating and those kinds of things. But then how do you maintain integrity? Because that's always a concern of, did this person just piggyback off someone else and they're not really prepared for what they need to get out of this course? And so I'd really like something more along standards-based grading, in some way to assess more authentically what students know, maybe more project-based learning and things like that. But getting that up and operating in a 10-week quarter, how do you manage that? Again, large class sizes, how do you manage that? I've read some research on like STEM high schools where they do some really incredible work, but they work with these students for 4 years or for at least a full year, not 10 weeks. And so getting something valuable and meaningful on that short time scale is hard too. So I'm still have this huge question mark about assessment. I don't know the best way to go about it. And so I keep falling back on these traditional assessments, and I do projects and other types of questions, group work, but it feels like there's still this, well, I have to do a test because how do I know what that person knows? And every time I do it, I just feel not good about it. So that's a big challenge that I would love to think about.
I think that's something most faculty face in one form or another. How do you teach students with different learning styles, or with learning styles that are different from your own?
So I will say that probably the way I teach now is very different than the way I learned and the way I thought I was supposed to learn. When I went through school in math, it was very much copy my examples, write down what I've done, and repeat. And that left me with a lot of holes. And one of my favorite professional development providers, her name is Ruth Parker, she says that it creates an illusion of learning, that, as a teacher, I could do that and I'd feel really good about, oh, my students all got this thing, but not really. I just told them that. And that was the way I learned. And I know that's a way that a lot of my students are most comfortable, because that's what they grew up with as well. So I have completely switched the way I teach to try to not be that I do, you do, we do kind of model. And it's much more inquiry based, which is very uncomfortable for students at first because it just feels different. And often I'll get feedback at the beginning, like, you're not teaching us because you're not telling us what to do. Because I'll often say, here's a problem, talk about it at your groups. What did you try? What did you try? And then we can talk about those different strategies. And so usually when I'm sensing that a student is feeling stressed about that or uneasy, I reach out and have one-on-one meetings with them and just talk about, like, here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I tell them that I'm going to push them because that's how they grow. But if they feel like they're getting pushed too hard and they've reached their limit, to talk to me and we can build in some scaffolds. We can help them, get to where they need to be. But that I'm going to keep trying to push them to think differently. And I think that the way I design tasks where they are open, it's not saying you have to do this problem this way. That does allow for some different learning styles because they can draw a table or make a graph or follow a pattern or try to use algebra, whatever tools that they feel are most useful for them. So that allows a little bit of flexibility to begin with.
So how would you label your teaching style?
I would say it's more inquiry-based learning, collaborative learning. It's definitely not a lecture-based classroom. It's very much student-centered. So I try to follow where they're going.
And how do you remain current in your field?
So I go to every professional development I possibly could. I am very connected with the K-12 network. So I am a statewide math fellow. So it's a group of math teacher leaders across the state. It's really designed K-12. I'm the only higher ed person in the state that's doing it, but I know they do great work. And so I wedged my way in there and said, please let me be a part of these conversations. I want to know what you're doing, because K-12 often has a lot more resources than we do at higher ed, and they're doing great work. And I think it's great for the community college to know what our students are coming in with. So I engage in the college and the high school conversations. In math, there's a Bridge to College program that I'm involved with as a mentor. So I really connect with K-12. And then I also facilitate some professional development at SCC or at SFCC. There's a group, I've done faculty inquiry groups before, and we have a group currently working on pre-calculus, writing tasks designed for helping students gain more competency and confidence in kind of concepts that will transfer throughout different levels, and helping them keep revisiting those ideas to build those connections. So I'm always happy to join in any group that wants to dig in. And the other piece is I'm now at the end of my second year of a PhD program in math and science education. So I'm pretty immersed in some research literature and some other research projects around math education.
What's one interesting thing about you outside of teaching that your colleagues and students may not know about you?
Let's see. I wish I could say my colleagues and students didn't know stuff about me, but I'm pretty sure I'm such an open book, they know. I'm a very active person, so hopefully I didn't move too much sitting on my ball in here. But as you can see from my surrounding, I am outside playing any chance I get. I am an insane animal lover, so most people that know me figure that out pretty quickly. My dog is the most spoiled dog you'll ever meet. Well, I know a lot of you probably have spoiled dogs too, but so that's kind of most about me. I think one of the things people don't expect, because I'm fairly short and small, is that I play ice hockey, and I enjoy that. I've played for 10 years, even though I'm not very good. My first 4 years, I didn't even know how to stop, so I just would run into things, and then it got problematic as I kept getting faster and faster, and then you just hit things harder. So once I broke my hand and injured my back, I had to learn how to stop. So now I can stop on one side.
Nice. Last question. Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have?
I don't think so.
Great. Well, thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. It was a real joy to get to know you a little bit further through this process.
Well, I hope you have something usable.
All right. Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. In fact, you notice I didn't re-ask the same question twice, really.
This presentation has been brought to you by the Spokane Falls Community College Italic Committee. Our mission is to promote effective teaching and to facilitate student learning by assisting in the development of outcomes assessment strategies for courses, programs, and degrees. Thank you for watching.